and welcome to the second episode of Coffee Chat and Book Review. This is a series on my channel where I will read a book and then review it. And it's preferably someone that I know, not preferably somebody that I know, preferably a young novelist, a young in the sense that they've been writing for years, and this is the first time or one of the first books that they've had published, and I read it and then I review it and I give them a shout out. So today I am drinking, it's very hot in the afternoon, it's actually 95 degrees here, and I'm drinking a lovely iced coffee that I made myself. And I have read, and I'm going to review, the book Earthshine by my good friend KJ. Now the book Earthshine is 49 pages, and it's mostly, the majority of it, is poetry, prose, and sonnets. And the poetry, prose, and sonnets are autobiography of my friend KJ's life, starting from the time he was about 18 years old and then going all the way through post-college, getting married, moving back to Oregon, having kids, having to work the day job and work in writing and all this. He has a preface that describes that and kind of describes who he is and how he came to be and how he came to be an author and how his journey of being an author has, where it's led him. And then before each sonnet or prose, there's about a 2 or 3 line paragraph describing where he was at specifically in the writing of each sonnet or prose. So that was interesting. So the first thing I was thinking about as I was reading it is I have known KJ for about 10 years. And I have heard a lot of this information. I know a lot about him. He's a very open, authentic, genuine person. He doesn't kind of wear a mask at all. And so I knew a little bit about this. I knew a lot about it. So I could relate. I could understand I could see some of this from what he's told me. However, I was able to see it in a deeper way. I was able to kind of understand where his mind was in these stories or these situations that I have either heard from him or lived with him. I mean, because I have known him for 10 years and a lot of it was more recent. So that was really empowering and interesting for me. The second is that even though he has written each of these sonnets, these prose, a paragraph or so above saying where he was at, you could, as the reader, individually read and take meaning from each of them for yourself. And so I think that's the powerful takeaway from his book, is that it's for him, it's very moving for him to show his autobiography in a way that is not a normal autobiography. It's prose, it's poetry, it's sonnets, it's very different from any other autobiography you might see. And then, but you can take it personally for yourself in your own life experiences. And the last one, it's a very short book. It's only 49 pages. I lay down to take a nap, to rest, Sunday afternoon, because what else do you do on Sunday afternoon if you could? I lay down and I read it within a couple hours, and I was very much enjoyed it. So the last thing I want to read to you is one of his sonnets, or it's more of a poem. And I'm going to read this one because when I read it yesterday, it really stuck out to me because it reminds me of KJ, of what he represents in the world and what he gives out, what he wants for other people. He's a teacher at heart. He's a parent. He's a good friend. He's an encourager. And so this really stuck out to me as the message of KJ. Big as you. Be big as you, bigger as you are, big as the brightest star. Be bright as you are, brighter for who you are, because of who you really are. Real is simply being true, always honest with being true, because it's good being you. So good because it's you, shining bright because of you, always being the bigger you. So with that, I will post the links in the About section below or in the comments as well where you can find his book, where you can purchase it, this and that, if that's available. And if you have any other books that you would like me to review, comment them below. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Share it out if you feel so inclined. And thanks for watching. Cheers. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your book a little bit.
Excellent, thank you. So my name is KJ, and I've been writing poetry for over 25 years. Started writing songs and lyrics and some tongue-in-cheek stuff back in high school. It's kind of where I realized, I like writing. I can say things. And then I ended up, in junior college and got distracted by work and studying. Went to regular college, the University for Theater. Got more distracted with theater productions constantly. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. After college, I graduated and I ended up going to Wisconsin with a band. And now I had time, free time. And I was like 22 years old. And like 22-year-olds, independent, I'm going to try figuring out who I am. What am I about? I should try writing. And a couple of years before that, I wrote a love poem for a girl that got away. And I was really proud of that. And so a couple of years later, here I am now, independent, living across the country, with some friends, and I started writing. And the very first poem I wrote went really, really smooth. Share of the Light, a sonnet, a Shakespearean style sonnet, much like the first one I wrote. Share of the Light. And that made me really excited too, because that just flowed. And so I wrote another one, and another one. And for the next 3 years, almost every single day, I just kept writing and writing. I figured out what my voice, my tone were. We got some good pacing, tried different styles, whether they're sonnets or haiku or open verse, just trying different things and different stories and life lessons that needed to come out. And so that became kind of part of who I am. He's that guy with the drum, but he's also got a pen and a pad, and he's always writing. But I like what I read, so
tell me about this book. How did it come together?
So after 25 years of writing and getting married and having more stories and kids and lessons learned, sometimes positive, sometimes struggles, spiritual, all sorts of different themes, I just continued writing. It kind of came in different waves, I'd go for a year or two, not do much. Then I'd go for a few months and just write a lot as I was filling something that needed to get out. And eventually, like many milestones, when my dad passed away, I wrote about that. Just like when I got married or when I got baptized, things like that, where I got to mark this moment in my life. Well, my dad passed away, and I was in a position where I actually had a little bit of time at a desk where I could just assemble everything together. And I was really good friends with a gentleman named Edward Miller, who was a publisher and a writer and photographer. And he really encouraged me to assemble it into an actual book, and he'd help me get it published through Amazon.com. And so Earthshine just kind of came together. It's like, all right, I'm going to find all my favorite poems, kind of find the story throughout, and come up with the little backstory behind each of those poems, share it with the world. I wrote a couple specific for this book and closed it off with that closer for my father along the riverbank. So all of a sudden, now I have this nice book that I can give away or I can sell on Amazon. Just basically my favorite poems, their stories, all together in one.
What are the significant memories of each piece?
Right. So, again, I marked a lot of milestones in my life, like when I got married or got baptized. In fact, the one I wrote when I got baptized, I was out playing with the kids outside in a big water fountain down in town, Portland, and the baptism was coming up about a week or two later. It's like, I should probably write about this. What am I going to do? And I just started writing, and it just started to happen. It just came out. This Water from Sin. Cute little ditty. It's playful. It's light. I happened upon a father and son and their spirit within. A choice to be made so I can be saved, eternal unto him. Taking a lot of those kinds of themes that you would find in the scriptures and just kind of relaying it out in a very easy, comfortable way for others to be able to absorb for themselves and find what meaning it might be for them. There's some other significant poems like Becoming Me, where I just finished a return trip home, a spring break trip, if you will, from Wisconsin back to the Northwest, came back, I took like 2 weeks off, visited all my family and friends, came back to Madison, this is back in spring of '99, and at that point I realized, the band is starting to break up, I see this happening, I really should just go back home, spend some time, write that book that I've been thinking about, still thinking about. I should write some poetry, do some theater down in Ashland or up in Portland. Maybe I should go work at Crater Lake. Well, I was still trying to flush that out, so I figured I will write about this. So I wrote, and all of a sudden this sonnet just came out, and it really defined who I am, where I was going, using the nature visuals and the flow and cadence that really resonates with my themes. And when I finished that poem, it's like, that is exactly what it's telling me, is I need to do that in return.
So, KJ, tell me, what is your favorite piece and why, if you have one, or maybe you have more than one?
Well, this book, and since I've been doing the book a couple years ago, I also have started to put these two pictures, again with the help of my friend Edward Miller and his photography. So it's captured in another really visual, striking opportunity. We're going to put this into a tabletop book. But another marker that I'm really excited about is called Evernight. It's when I was out with the Boy Scouts as an adult. I've been an assistant scoutmaster over the years. I'm still dedicated to serving the kids. I've always been a teacher. But when I was out on this 50-mile canoe trip in Washington, I was looking up at the stars, and we're out in nature, so there's no light pollution. It's just so vast and clear, and started making me think. And so I started writing this poem called Evernight. It's free verse. It didn't have any specific structure or rhyme scheme, but it just flowed. I'm really excited about it. It's become one of my signature poems. The sky is so vast tonight, just as I expected, just as I remembered. Everything so much more clear. Yet far, what can I expect? What don't I know? I listen to the sounds of night, the quiet, still not there. From here I look, maybe hoping, with all I remember of this night, with all expectations growing more. And at that moment, when I finished it, I knew it was done. It was a first draft. I didn't have to do really any editing. I shared it with the scouts and the other adults the next morning. And I realized, yep, this is who I am. And this is one of those pieces that needs to be shared. And so, including like tonight, I'm going to be going and doing a poetry slam. And that might be one of the ones I pick. When I try and force a poem out, it's difficult. It's really truncated. And I find I don't know what the story is. What is the message I'm trying to relay? What is the setting? In nature, in the sky, in my head. When I try and force myself to create, it doesn't feel natural. But all of a sudden, when there's emotion and something aching to be expressed, all of a sudden, I know I need to just start writing. I'll probably start writing a poem, and it completely turns into a completely different thing, the actual thing that needed to get out. So I start writing. I don't necessarily plan to write a specific sonnet where I'm using pentameter and rhyming couplets. I'll just start writing what seems to flow, and then I'll kind of look at the lines and write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The next line, 7. Maybe I should just try 7 syllables per line and just see where this goes. And then it starts to adjust, and eventually, as I figure out what's the rhyming couplets, am I doing A, B, B, or A, B, B, A? How am I going to make that work? And what are the words coming out that feel like they fit? And so I just start writing, and I might decide, no, that I want to keep this a little later. Maybe I'm going to keep it down here. And I just do some editing, and usually it takes about 3 or 4 hours to get an initial draft done, and then I will leave it alone for a day. I'll come back to it the next day, see what might need to get cleaned up. Maybe take this stanza, move it down here, move this one around, or maybe just scrap the whole thing and start over.
And what is your what inspires you to write? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what excites me to write is I love wordplay. I love being able to craft as a skill set these ideas into something that's tangible for other people to read and easy for them to read and absorb and hopefully to be uplifted by, to find meaning. What inspires me is that not only do I feel uplifted, but that others actually walk away feeling hopeful and at peace. One of the main themes behind what I write is I might talk about something that's a struggle, but by the very end, it turns into something that's hopeful. And maybe I'll no longer have to wait my turn. You know, when I have that love story of the one that got away, well, maybe there's an opportunity coming. Or no, I like to flip things so that at least it's positive and that other people can actually relate to, because you know, not everyone has it easy all the time, and not everyone struggles all the time, but we've all been able to experience those different feelings.
Talk about, if you're a teacher and an influencer in your own way, what word of advice do you have to someone coming up that wants to write or create in a way? What's your advice?
Well, as been a teacher for many years, I've since transitioned out of that career, but between drama and language arts and history, I've been able to kind of be that side. And upper elementary, middle school kids, those kids who are 12, 13, 14, 15, and really ready to find themselves, I definitely kind of reach out to them for theater, but also for writing, and for them to be able to help themselves realize that there is a way for them to express what they're struggling to understand for themselves. And so when I reach out to others and try and help teach and mentor how to write, or the writing process, or at least the creative process, I want them to understand that it's just, there's no structure that you have to stay to. Structure helps. It gives you some ways to go, somewhere to write that has a format. So at least using a certain amount of syllables and knowing that you want to have certain kind of rhyming forces you to create with certain words. But it's really just a process where you should know what the message is that you're trying to share, and you want to set it up in a way that is not so specific that, well, I'm writing about this one very particular person, I'm going to put their name in it. Rather, a general you out there instead of the specific person, or out in nature instead of at the specific park. I like to make it more generic so it applies to everybody. But at the same time, I want to be able to let them know that if it's specific to a person or a place, it's okay to go ahead and include that. If you don't have the right word that you're searching for, but you have something, start with that. You can always come back to it and edit it later. You can always start over, at least you have the idea. Try and tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Try and make it so that it's meaningful to you, because that's the most important part, is you're trying to flesh these ideas out for yourself. And maybe you don't even want to ever share it with anybody, and that's totally okay. What's more important is that you're in tune to the fact that there is a writing process. It is a medium, a way to express yourself. And if it helps you process thoughts, figure things out for yourself, great. If you just want to write a cute little tongue-in-cheek limerick, that's okay too. Maybe you're a songwriter, and this is the starting process of how to write songs. Or if you're a short story writer, it doesn't have to be a poem. You can have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and express something, and it's however you decide your voice can be used as a perfect way to just use your voice.
So what is your favorite kind of format for poetry? Like there's the haiku and sonnets. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite, or does it...
I like haikus because they're short and sweet. They're ethereal, and they talk about big ideas in a very succinct way. 5, 7, 5 as far as syllables. My favorite is the sonnet because I started doing that, and I'm a theater guy. I love Shakespeare, and I find my personal cadence really kind of fits with that 10-syllable beat. And you got a sense of 4, 4, 4, and then a closing of 2. So you're able to have that beginning, a couple stanzas in the middle, and then a closure, and maybe a closing thought after that, or a call to action, if you will. So I really like the sonnets because it forces you to keep into a very specific structure. It gives you different ways you can do your rhyming couplets. And not very many people do it, and all of a sudden now kind of makes you stand out a little bit. But it's not really about me standing out, it's about the poem. In today's day, the modern age, where not a lot of people write in that style, and so it's a throwback to the golden age, if you will.
KJ, what is next for you, and where can we purchase this book?
Excellent. So I have another book that I've been working on, and it keeps coming and then going, and I get distracted, and I come back to it, and it's changed. That story being Aura, where you have this sage-type character who's manifested and interacts with other people, and it's a way for them to learn about life lessons, and for her to take on their experiences and grow from that. Everyone grows. So as she continues to find her own light, she's interacting with other people. And so that story, which is going to be heavily poetic and with heavy poetic narrative, so a mixture, that's on the horizon. Hopefully in the next couple more years I'll get it finished. It's all up here. I know where it's going. I've outlined it. I just got to get down and do it. But this book, I finished it a couple years ago, Earthshine. It's on Amazon.com, so you can follow the links below, or just search Earthshine, my name KJ, and it'll pop up just as easy as that. It's only like $7.95, I believe, super cheap. There's a Kindle version, a downloadable version, but to be honest, having it in your hand is really special. It's formatted a little easier, and then we can just flip to the story you want to read and be uplifted by it.
And if people want to reach out and get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Well, if you send me a Facebook request or message me, Facebook KJ Long or kj.rise. I also have a poetry page, earthshine.poetry. Earthshine, right? You can email me, kj.rise@hotmail.com. Rise being like a power word, if you will. Or if you're friends with her, she's friends with me, and you can find me on her friends list.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you very much,
absolutely.
KJ.